Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having an amazing day. Thank God. Nisan is here. Aviv is here. This is the month in which the full revelation of Hashem's name takes place, where miracles happen, where we left slavery. And it's important to know, and I was thinking about it as well, the Shulchan Aruch says that for 30 days before the Chag, you need to be investigating and searching after the different halachot of Pesach, meaning you need to know all about Pesach. You need to know how to engage in the Seder. You need to know what type of matzah to eat, all the different practical. You need to know how to remove the chametz. And you have 30 days, so to speak, to do that between Purim to Pesach. So I had a thought yesterday based on the fact that according to Kabbalah and according to Chassidut, we know that Chazal teach us that we were 49 gates into impurity, into Tuma, into negativity in the land of Egypt. And if we had stayed there for one more moment, we would have been extinguished and we never would have made it out. So later on, the sages teach, the Hasidic masters teach, what was that 50th gate? What was so qualitatively different about it that the 50th gate was so much more severe than the 49 gates before it, that if you reach the 50th, that's what causes that there's no coming back. And they say that the 50th gate is called Yeush, which is unbelievable and fits in very well with what Rabbi Nachman teaches us, that the 50th gate of impurity is not some type of metaphysical, it's not some type of darkened, tangible reality, but it's the experience of despair. That when a person reaches despair, full despair, there's no coming back. And the Jewish people, what was happening to them in Egypt, which appeared to be on paper and according to Chazal and the way that we understand them, we were getting more and more into the beliefs of the Mitzrim. And Rabbi Nachman says that belief was in Teva only, meaning that we were 49 gates deep into Teva, into the belief in nature only, 49 gates away from Hashgacha Pratit, that Hashem controls and causes everything to happen and pumps life force into all of reality, that he is the cause of all causes. And we were moving into the fact that Teva was the cause of causes. And when you reach the 50th gate of Teva, that is that you reach the belief in Teva and you're so invested in it, you're 50 times in it. Once you get there, it's just Yeush for a Jew. It's only despair. And for there, we can't come back. And this is the reason why we have a month, 30 days to search for all the chametz in our life, because we know that Rabbi Nachman teaches that chametz is the physical manifestation of what he calls chokhmot chitzoniot, secular wisdom. That is that the wisdom which the secular world brings us, specifically in the realm of science or laws of nature, that A plus B equals C, that we can only live according to things that we can taste, touch, smell, experience, according to our five senses. And there's not anything going on beyond that. And if there is, it's superfluous. It's almost insane to even live according to something which is deeper than those five senses. Even though if you think about it, to say that all the world goes according to what I understand, it's very, very arrogant. And I know because I used to do that. So it's also not so intelligent. It's not that smart. Either way, the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman and what Rav Natan is trying to slam into us is that what we're trying to get rid of until Pesach and what's bringing us closer every single day to Geula is that the redemption itself is not necessarily from what takes place on Pesach, but it's actually the getting rid of the chametz for the 30 days prior that's causing you to be free. That you're getting rid of your investment in secular wisdom, in nature, as being the almighty power in your life, and that you're realizing that nature itself, like Rabbi Nachman says, like Rav Natan hammers home for us into our hearts, is nothing more than a mere manifestation of Hashem's Hashgacha Pratit, and it's enclosed in this sweater, which is called Teva. But that sweater itself, says Rabbi Nachman, is actually the most external part of him. It's even the most external piece of clothing, that he has many layers of clothing, so to speak, under that, which is infusing and causing that outermost layer of garb to cause what appears to be the events that take place in our life. And this is Teva. And Rav Natan says, Chas v'shalom, that we should believe that this is the cause of the events in our life. And this is really the chametz that we're trying to get rid of. And we're trying to break the chametz, Rabbi Nachman says, and to switch it and make it into matzah, which we know that the only difference between chametz and matzah is that the chet turns into a hay. And the Zohar brings that how do you switch the chametz and make it into matzah? You need to break that chet. How do you break that chet? You need to scream to Hashem. Because in the end, when a person, Rabbi Nachman says, has become so invested in secular wisdom that he believes that that's all that there is, and then all of a sudden life happens to him. He has struggles financially, he has struggles with his wife, he has struggles with his kids, he has struggles within himself, believing in himself. And he has invested himself so much in the fact that things can't change because they are how they're supposed to be, and nothing can void or alter those laws of nature, because everything that caused this is now giving birth to this. And therefore, unless there's some type of miraculous change, which we don't believe in, then I will always be like this. And he comes to say that you need to scream to Hashem now, because at that point, that's the only way you're going to leave Mitzrayim. That's the only way you're going to leave your belief in Teva. And we see, how do we have a proof for this? Where did Rabbi Nachman get this from? Is this another one of his pieces of advice which seem to be extreme or fanatic, that we should actually go outside and scream to Hashem instead of, let's say, learning Torah or doing a kind deed for somebody else, but that it's mamish, the concept of screaming to Hashem, that causes the break, that we're able to move beyond this guise of entrapment and to move beyond into freedom. And we see it's very clear from the Chumash that when the Jews were in Mitzrayim, and it says that we had kotzer ruach, we had shortness of breath, we couldn't breathe. Because what happens when you're stressed? Because you think that things can't change and you just have to push harder and harder of your own efforts. So you have trouble breathing. And Rabbi Nachman says, what happens when you have trouble breathing? You don't have time to think and you're not happy. Rabbi Nachman says, when you're not happy, then you can't think clearly. And when you can't think clearly, you can't believe in Hashem. And if you can't believe in Hashem, then you don't want to connect to him. And then you get more and more stuck into this vicious cycle that just gets stronger and stronger and stronger until, like the Jews in Mitzrayim, you can't do anything else besides just scream out to Hashem and cry. And the Rachamim of Hashem is that natural outpouring of a Jew when he has become so invested in a false reality. And there's no turning back at that point. He has reached such a low point. He has reached the floor. He has reached Gehenna in this world, Rabbi Nachman says. It's the actual experience of screaming out that breaks the chet and turns it into a hay. And we know that the hay is the reflection of the Shekhinah. The hay is the letter which represents Hashem being felt and experienced in this world. And so whether you purposefully follow the teachings of Rabbi Nachman, try to internalize them in your life, and therefore you're humble enough to know that you don't know anything, and therefore Hashem's already in your life. Or you don't, and you think you know everything, and you think that you're the cause. Ani meloch, that I run my life, I run the world, and there's only nature. You're also going to come to the revelation of Hashem, because a Jew in the end is going to feel suffocated by that reality. He's going to end up screaming to Hashem, and that itself is going to break the lie. Now back inside. Ki ikar sitra de misava sharia al yada devar nash. Because the essence of this impurity which rests on the hand after we go to sleep at night, that we have to, according to the Shulchan Aruch, wash our hands right away in order to remove that impurity. K'moshe katuv b'Zohar Kadosh, like the Zohar Kadosh says, ki hayadayim mebechinat shamayim. Because the hands are the concept of heaven. The hands are the concept of the spiritual worlds which exist in parallel to this physical world. Why? Because it says in the Midrash in Bereshit Rabbah that Shamayim is a composite of two entities. That is Eish, fire, and mayim, water. Yad yamin v'yad small. That according to Kabbalah, that the concept of water is the right hand, and the concept of fire is the left hand. B'china ki asa el shamayim yadi. Like it says in Devarim, that I'm lifting my hands to Shamayim. That like Rabbi Nachman so often does, and like Rav Natan, his main disciple and scribe, is also emulating. That within the pasuk, when the Torah says something like Moshe Rabbeinu's hands were emuna, then Rabbi Nachman will come out and say a beautiful chidush that the hands are emuna. That you see based on the juxtaposition of these two words next to each other in the first essential expression of emuna in the Torah, it must be it's connected to the hands. So Rav Natan is doing the same exact thing at the end of the Torah, that I lift my hands up to Shamayim, meaning that hands lifted is called Shamayim. Like it says in the Kutmaran, Simonan Vei Vav Otet, V'sham Ikar Achizat Sitra Achra, that there is the essence of the holding of the Sitra Achra, of the forces of negativity in our personal lives, in our collective lives, B'chinat Chochmat Teva, which Rabbi Nachman says is called the wisdom of nature, that it's your guiding principle. It is the sole influence in your life. The Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman, which really comes from the Zohar, is that is actually the Sitra Achra. That is the cause of negativity within our own psychological experience of life. B'chinat Yadayim, it's the concept of the falling of the hands. Instead of our hands being risen to Shamayim, our hands are down from Yeush, from despair, which Rabbi Nachman says, where does despair and depression come from? It comes from excess, which is an interesting thing that he teaches in the Likutey Moharan. It took me a long time to try and figure out what that meant, but at least one expression of what that means is that we know that everything in this world has a fruit and a peel according to Kabbalah. It has a pri, a fruit, and it has a klipa, it has a husk or a peel. And the whole entire purpose of the peel is just to give an opportunity of free choice to a person to be able to unpeel it and see that there's fruit on the inside. Or if he doesn't choose to, and he doesn't choose to see deeper into his life, he only chooses to be satisfied with the external aspect of reality. So then he's going to eat the peel and he's not going to feel well. So too, Rabbi Nachman says wisdom has a fruit and a peel. What's the fruit of wisdom? It's called Torah, spiritual wisdom. And the outside of that, the husk which covers it, is called chochmot chitzoniot, external wisdom, which Rabbi Nachman calls excess. Just like, so to speak, when a boy has a brit milah on the 8th day, and we have a piece of that body part, which is so precious, which is the procreative organ, which is the essential life force of a man. And we're going to remove this excess piece of skin from the outside and to reveal the crown which is under it. So too, Rabbi Nachman says, everything in life has that. Wisdom as well. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says that the key to Geula, like Shachar said in the beginning of the class, is the concept of the mastery of the Brit. Because everything in this physical world has a klipa, has a orla, has a foreskin. And we cannot use it while it has the orla, while it has the foreskin. And we see this even in the Torah, al pi halacha, with trees, which, by the way, is a very similar shape to the concept, the bechina, what's going on between the male body part that's down below. And that is that in the first 3 years of a tree, you're not allowed to use it, and you're not allowed to eat its fruit, because that's called the orla. These are the years of there's excess. There is something which is external going on right now. And until that's removed, now we can use the actual fruit of the tree in a way that's healthy for us, in a way that's beneficial, in a way that is nutritious. So too with everything in our life. There is a concept of orla, the excess part of the skin. And Rabbi Nachman says in the first Torah of Likutey Moharan, it is the entire ikar of a Jew to remove the foreskin of everything in this life and to reveal the crown, to reveal the corona, and not the corona of the Sitra Achra, not the corona of negativity, not the corona of fear, of fallen fears, not the corona of hatred, which is coming out through the disease which has swept over the world, and paranoia. And the worst side of everyone is coming out, so to speak. But if a person can look deeper, then he can see that there's another corona, there's another keter, there's another crown, and that's the crown of Hashem. And it's amazing, there continues to be an uptick that no matter what type of methods that we use to contain the disease or to get rid of the disease and to vaccinate, that for over a year since we started, it just keeps popping up. And chas v'shalom, that we should believe for 1 second that maybe this disease is not natural, but it's supernatural. That the reason that there is such a thing as this virus is because Hashem wants there to be. And what does the Torah teach is the key to getting rid of all decrees? It is not to wear a mask. It's actually to cry out to Hashem. Can you imagine that after a year of going through everything that we're going through, if we simply all came together as a humanity for 1 hour and we all just went outside and started praying to Hashem and the thing just ends? But God forbid that we should ever believe that we're not in control of the world, that we don't have control of the universe, that we can't, through our advanced technology and understanding of medicine, our understanding of genetics, our understanding of disease, to maybe think to ourselves, we don't know what's going on, that we should let ourselves experience the humility of realizing that we might not be in control of this one. It's interesting. The Gemara says, it was talking about a disease. And it says there that a person should leave the town that he lives in if there's a disease in his town. Now, obviously, what do you need a Gemara to teach you that for? We've seen many people just now. They've tried to move away to different places, maybe that are less of a red zone, or just to get away into more open space, more open air, not to deal with being crowded and crunched in during the time of the Magefa. But the Maharsha, I believe, who's one of the most incredible commentators on the Gemara, he says something which is wild. He says that the pshat is the simple understanding of why the Gemara has to come and tell you to leave the place where there is a disease or a virus is not because that you shouldn't get the virus. It's because the fear, the Maharsha says, of the fact that the virus is near you, that fear will become so intense for the person who lives in the space where the virus is, that the fear itself is going to cause him to get sick. And in order to remove that fallen fear, he should move to another place so that the result is that he won't have that fear and therefore he won't get sick. And even according to science, we know now that the greatest cause of the immune system being decreased, which we know is the primary vulnerability for a person when there's disease that sweeps over, is the strength of his immune system. And even according to the scientists, they even taught me when I was in graduate school in UCLA, the greatest cause of disease is stress. And the belief that nature is the cause of everything that takes place, Rav Natan says, Rabbi Nachman teaches, this is the cause of all yeyush, of despair. Bechinat Yadayim, this is the concept of the fallen hands. Kihem tolim b'ma'arechet shamayim, because they're dependent on the constellations, meaning science of the skies, which used to be their science back then. And therefore, the essence of the strengthening of the Sitra Achra, it's at the time of sleep. Shehi Bechinat Teva, which is the time of nature. Hu b'yadayim daika, the specific time of the hands. Ki yadayim hem chaf chet pirkin, because we know that the hands, Rav Natan says, have 28 sections. That if you look at your hand, you'll notice that there's 2 sections on one finger, 3 sections here, 3 sections here, 3 sections here, 3 sections here. That's 14. We know the gematria of Yad, hand in Hebrew, is 14, meaning the 14 sections of the hand create the hand. And now if you have 2 hands, so now you have 28. Koach, that this is Yadayim. Keneged the Chaf Chet Atvan, Shibemase Bereshit. That Rav Natan is referencing the Zohar, which says that there are 28 letters of Maseh Bereshit, of the creation of spiritual and physical reality. Where did the Zohar get that from? It's from the 28 letters that are in the first pasuk in the Torah, which Rabbi Nachman speaks about, is the entire koach and source and germination of creation. That all creation that takes place in existence is rooted in that first pasuk in the Torah. So if there's any new reality that you see in the world, it has to be sourced in that first line in the Torah, which is 28 letters, which is corresponding to the gematria of the word koach, which has to do with the hands. Just on a side note, this is why Rabbi Nachman teaches that when a person claps his hands, he's actually drawing down that first pasuk in the Torah, that he's, so to speak, illuminating it. So it brings new realities into the world. This is the breaking of decrees. And that's why Rabbi Nachman says in the 10th Torah of Likutey and in many other places, that through simcha and the clapping of hands, daika specifically, that's what breaks decrees. Because decrees comes from the fact that things are this way right now. How do you break a decree? You need a new reality, a new metziut. And you can't get a new metziut, a new reality from anywhere except from the first pasuk of the Torah, from Bereshit bar Elokim at the Shemayim at the Aretz. And the key to tapping into the 28 letters of creation is to clap your 28 sections of your hand. Shemayim. Keneged, like we're saying now, this is the creation of the spiritual and physical world. Shemayim va'aretz. Bechina, like it says in Yeshaya, Af yadi yasda aretz. So too, my hand formed the world. V'yamini tipcha shemayim. And my right hand, it is the tefach, it is the measurement of shemayim. According to Kabbalah, what does this mean? That if later on you see Yamini is the right hand, so what's the Yadi, what's the hand which Hashem is speaking about, that the prophet is giving over, that formed the world? So the Yadi must be the left hand, meaning to say that, so to speak, the left hand of Hashem is what created the physical world, and the right hand of Hashem is what created the spiritual worlds. Because we know that the left hand, or the left side in spirituality, is always the manifestation of physicality. It's the side that gives birth to actualization. The right side is the side of potential. That's the side of spirituality. That's the side of Shemayim. So it's the right hand, Yamini, that gives birth to spirituality, and is the left side which gives birth to physicality. And by the way, this is the secret, says the Zohar, of when Adam was created. That it says, Naseh, let us make them in our image. And this is a very, very hard thing to understand, because all according to the Torah so far, Hashem is creating. And now all of a sudden, there's a plural. There's let's create, let us create. What is let us create? So says the Zohar, this is speaking about Chokhmah, which is Abba, and Ima, which is Bina. Meaning to say, that the human being was created by these 2 spiritual forces, which is called the male dimension of Hashem, so to speak, and the female dimension of Hashem, so to speak. And the female dimension of Hashem came to the male dimension of Hashem and says, let us create men. And because of that, we are created with these 2 natures. We have a side of us which is spiritual, which only exists in potential, which is connected to Shemayim, which is constantly yearning to draw back and to cleave to our source and to go back home, so to speak, that we're constantly searching for something that's lacking. That's Shemayim. And then we have the part of us which is very heavy, which is very physical, which is very attached to the limited, tangible world that we see in front of us. And that's the left side. That is the female aspect of our reality. And it's the connection of these two that makes man. And that's also the source of our bechira, of our free will, of our choice. And therefore, the essence of the subduing of negativity in this world, shehem ha'akum de alma, that they are manifested in the physical world. By the non-Jewish world. Bechinat chochmat hateva, that their life force is coming from nature, as opposed to a Jew's life force, which is coming from hashgacha pratit. And this is the reason Rav Natan says that when non-Jewish scientists are fully engaged in believing only in nature, they don't go into yeush, they don't go into despair. And yet we see constantly that when Jewish people, secular Jewish people, religious Jewish people, only believe in teva, only believe in nature, no matter what they say, or no matter how they dress, but that's what they really believe. You see that they go into complete yeush. The amount of anxiety and neuroticism that comes out from that Jewish person is something that you don't see in the non-Jewish world. Not to the same extent, not even close. Why? Because that's not our life force. That's not our chiyut. That's not what gives us energy and joy and excitement in our life. It's not teva. So automatically, a Jew goes into yeush, he goes into despair, he goes into fear mode. That is so intense because we are not drawing from our life force. It's like a fish being taken out of water. When you have land animals and they're getting air from outside, so it's no problem for them to live like that because that's their existence. They get their life force from the air. But the Jewish people are connected to the fish. So no matter what you do, if you take a fish out of water, even though the air is still air, it's not air for that fish. Air for a fish is water. The water is Torah. The whole ikr of Torah is emunah and da'at, is belief in hashgacha pratit, that Hashem is the cause of everything that takes place, and da'at, the knowing, internalization, the intimate experience with that belief. And when you're living with that at every moment, you are living in the water. And this is the same reason why when they came to Rabbi Akiva, not unlike now, and they said you need to close down the yeshiva system because there is a magifa going on right now. The Romans want to kill us because we're learning Torah. And Rabbi Akiva, who didn't grow up religious, who hated rabbis, who hated religion, who hated orthodoxy for 40 years, he said, no, we're going to keep learning. How can you do that? That's not responsible. You're the leader of the generation. You have thousands and thousands of people who are going to be affected by this decision. And Rabbi Akiva said, I'm going to give you a mashal. If you have fish in the sea and you have a person who comes after a predator, you have a fisherman. So the fisherman comes after the fish. He puts the hook and line into the ocean. He may get the fish and he may not. But for sure, if you take the fish out of the water, all the fish are going to suffocate. And he says, so too, we're fish. And if we stop learning and we give in to the Romans, so we may survive and we may not. But for sure, 100%, if we stop learning Torah, if we stop learning about Emunah, if we stop learning about Hashgacha Pratit, if we believe in what the Romans teach in Teva, in nature, in giving in only to physicality, then for sure we're all going to die. And death, Rabbi Nachman says, is not just for the next world. If you're alive right now and you're just barely surviving because of sadness, because of anxiety, because of confusion, because of lack of life force and motivation, you're called dead. And that should be no surprise to any of us because that's how we feel. And thank God that we finally have something to resonate with. That when everybody tells me it's okay, but I don't feel like it's okay, because it's not okay. Because we're called spiritually dead right now. And we need to be able to tap into life. And it's this belief in Teva, this belief in nature, that actually causes the forces of nature to be stronger. And therefore, like it's taught many times in Kabbalah and Chassidut, and like we see with Moshe Rabbeinu, when he took that bitter tree and he put it in bitter water and it became sweet, that the essence of the answer to any problem is the problem itself. That if you take the problem and you look at it a little bit differently, or if you take the cause of the problem and you elevate that cause, then automatically it becomes the solution. So too, just like the fallen hands, meaning belief in nature, is the cause of our suffering, our belief in Teva, which is causing Yeyush, despair, then if we take those same hands and we lift them up in Amunah, in Tefillah, in Hashgacha Pratit, then we fix the problem. Therefore, it's specifically through the lifting up of the hands, meaning through Hibodadu, through talking to Hashem, that we break this decree, we break this Yeyush, we break this despair. Because according to Kabbalah, when a Jew lifts his hands in tefillah, he's lifting his hands to his head. And this was the whole entire essence of this Torah, going back to the beginning. Because even though we're learning all these things, Pashut, what is this Torah that we're learning about? It's supposed to be about the laws of washing of the hands. What does that have to do with anything that we learned today? Even though this might be amazing, even though this might be exactly what we needed to hear in our life. At the same time, what does this have to do with the laws of washing of the hands? Because that's why Rav Natan wrote Likutey Halachot, to give the deeper meaning according to Rabbi Nachman, according to Kabbalah and Chassidut, of every single law in the Torah. The answer is that when you wash your hands, the Shulchan Aruch says that you should lift them up. Why? Because according to Kabbalah, when you lift them up, now they're elevated to the head. Because the key, says Rabbi Nachman, to da'ah, to knowing that Hashem is the cause of everything in your life, it must be preceded by emunah. Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do without understanding. Meaning emunah, I'm going to lift up my hands, v'nishma, then I'm going to understand. That it's not that what we think. Let me go have an experience that Hashem is the cause of my life, and now I'm going to believe more in Hashem. The Torah says it's the opposite, and Rabbi Nachman is hammering this home for all of us. It's not let me see it and then I'll believe it. It's let me believe it and then I'll see it. That this is the whole ikar of Rabbeinu's admonishing us constantly. The reason why we're in despair and we don't see Hashem in our life is because we're waiting for Hashem to have an arousal from above, and then we're going to have an arousal from below. But according to Kabbalah, it doesn't work like that. There's only ever an arousal from below that brings an arousal from above. That the ability to see fruit in your life, you must believe that there could be fruit in your life. And it's the belief that is the life force that gives birth to that reality. Rabbi Nachman used to say something, a lot of things he said were very interesting. One thing that he said that's very, very fascinating is, he said people say that stories don't have the ability, telling stories doesn't have the ability to make women pregnant. But I say that telling stories has the ability to make people pregnant, to help them conceive. What is he talking about? What's the whole essence of telling a story? That a person has fallen asleep, according to Rabbi Nachman. And only the power of a really good story can arouse and wake them up and make them believe that there's hope, make them believe that there's a chance, make them believe that there's the ability for them to move out of that space of despair and to experience a new reality in their life. So why did Rabbi Nachman make Sipor Masiot? Why 4 years before he passed away in 1806, did he say that you guys are not being affected in the way that I hoped from my Torah, from my advice? So from now on, I'm going to tell you stories. Was he giving up? No. Because he's saying that to the degree in which a person is sleeping spiritually, to the degree he only believes in Hashgacha Pratit, the opposite of nature, to that degree he's called sleeping according to Rabbi Nachman. And then Torah can't help him anymore. Now he needs stories from ancient times. And as a side note, lest the person think that this just means that spiritually I'll wake up and therefore I'll be given birth to. And that's what Rabbi Nachman's saying, that through the telling of stories, I'll wake you up and now you'll become spiritually alive. We did a event with the Tasha Rebbe, his son-in-law, who has taken over for him in Muncie. And he is a very, very big chassid of Rabbi Nachman ever since he was a child, despite the fact that he comes from this sect of chassidus that's called Tasha. And he actually teaches every week Sipori Masiot, the stories of Rabbi Nachman. And he's been doing it now for years. And when he started telling and giving over this class, the way that he pitched it to the people around him is that Rabbi Nachman says that when a person hears these stories, when we tell these stories, they're going to give birth to children. And he believes it. And he said to himself, the rabbi said, unless you think, what does that have to do with you? You're a guy and you're coming to my class. You're not giving birth to any children. Well, if you're going to give birth to children, that means that you have to be married. And that means that if this is going to cause you to give birth, this is going to cause you to get married. And so many single people joined that class. And I heard from a firsthand account from the Gabbai of the Rebbe, who became the Gabbai because of this experience, that he was single before this and he had trouble getting married for a long time, that he came to this class and he said almost every single person in that class got married that year after struggling to get married the whole year. And as a result of that, he became a chassid of him, and now he's his Gabbai. And Baruch Hashem, they have children. So, when Rabbi Nachman says something, it's serious, even if it sounds, wild. And so too here, it's the power of the story that wakes up. And now we can understand why they teach us something very deep, that in Mitzrayim, if we would have reached the 50th gate of Tumah, of impurity, we never would have been able to come back. Like in the Shoah, that we were able to come back because we weren't all wiped out. But if we had reached the 50th gate of Mitzrayim in Egypt thousands of years ago, we would never have been able to start over again. However, they say now that we are actually past the 50th gate. We have reached it. So how are we still here? Because now we have the Torah. What is the Torah? It's a story. And because of the power of the story, that we keep looking at it every day, it allows us to continue to wake up and to remember, Zeh Elokim, Hashem Hua Elokim, that Hashem is Teva, that this natural physical world is only an expression of the Ratzon of Hashem, the desire of whatever Hashem wants it to be. And it's the power of this story that allows us to continue to exist and hope to give us the ability to give birth to Amunah, to real faith, to real connection, to real truth, to unity, to peace. It's the power of the story. Like it said that Moshe lifted up his hands, the Gavar Yisrael, and when he lifted up his hands, then the Jewish people were winning the war against Amalek. But when his hands were down, they were losing against Amalek. Why? Because Amalek represents the nation, which is the physical manifestation of all the forces of negativity in the world, that they're from Esav. So therefore, even though we're learning at the Torah that we have to wipe out Amalek, this nation, it's a mitzvah deoraita. It's one of the three things that we have to do upon entering the land when Yeshua conquered it. But we have to understand that Rabbi Nachman says, what is the manifestation of the land of Israel in our life? It's not just a physical land. It's the ability to ascend and transcend all of your suffering, all of your illness, all of your problems, and to move into an elevated state of existence called Amunah. That when you do that, that's called entering into the land of Israel. And there's no way to do that except for wiping out Amalek. And like the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says, that the gematria of Amalek is safek, is doubts, is fallen fears, it's anxiety, it's neuroticism. And where does Rabbi Nachman say all of these doubts and neuroticism and fears and anxieties come from? It doesn't come from a genetic disorder. It doesn't come from the fact that Jews are just neurotic. It comes from the fact that Jews, their life force is not news. Their life force is not science. Their life force is faith. And when a Jew does not have faith in Hashem, he automatically goes into anxiety, into despair, because he is being whipped by Amalek. but we have to destroy Amalek in order to get the land back. And this is our destiny. This is what Hashem created us for, that we should get to the point of Emunah Shlema, that we should believe in the goodness of life. We should believe in the meaning of life, the purpose of life. That life is good, that Hashem is good, that there is good. And this is all going to turn out for the good. But when Moshe's hands were down, we lost that war. When Moshe's hands were up, we were winning the war. Why? Because Moshe represents the godly soul in every Jew. He's called Jer Nefesh Elokit. That the Rambam says every single Jew has the potential to be like Moshe Rabbeinu. How can every Jew be like Moshe Rabbeinu? Or let's bring it even closer to us. That Rabbi Nachman says that any person who genuinely attaches themselves to me and does their best to draw in my wisdom, does their best to live with my advice, does their best to manifest and actualize the things which I give over, and to be busy with it every day. Rabbi Nachman says, I will make you like a tzaddik like me mamish. What does that mean? How could we all be like Rabbi Nachman? This is the great grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. This is a person who had such an elevated state of understanding of consciousness that his teachings, which are based on the Arizal, which are based on the Zohar, which are based on the hardest, most difficult esoteric concepts, which are completely bound up with the Gemara and the Midrash and the Mishnah and Halachah, and there's no gap or break in any of it. And he comes out with this unbelievable understanding, which we can live with in a practical way, in a way which transforms a Jewish life in every lesson. He says, you could be just like me. How can you be just like me? How can the Rambam say we could all be like Moshe? Because there's a part of us that's called the Tzaddik Yesod Olam. There's a part of us that's called the Nefesh Elokit, the godly soul in each of us. Because it says that the Jewish people are Kulam Tzaddikim. That we're all Tzaddikim. And the Zohar says, what does it mean that we're all Tzaddikim? It means we all have the potential to be Tzaddikim. What does it mean to be a Tzaddik? It says that tzaddik lives with his emunah. And Rabbi Nachman says emunah is tefillah. So when a Jew is praying to Hashem, he's a tzaddik. Every moment that a Jew is lifting his hands up and he's speaking to Hashem like he's his best friend and he's asking for help and he's releasing all of these fears and insecurities that he has and he's giving them all to Hashem and he's thanking Hashem for all the things that he has that he never thanked him for, the fact that I could see, the fact that I can hear, the fact that I can even continue to live in my life and I have the ability to move from this space even though I haven't been able to yet. The fact that I'm even walking, breathing entity in this world, that you made me Jewish. A part of this unbelievable historical unfolding since the times of our ancestors, which will culminate with the coming of Mashiach and the Geula and the transformation of this universe in the most beautiful, amazing way. Then your hands are up. Then you're like Moshe. But when Moshe's hands are down, meaning we're not talking to Hashem, we don't have emunah, we believe only in nature, then Amalek, meaning doubts, are going to whip us. And this is the real war of Amalek. Because Amalek is mamish, the entire encompassment of all the forces of negativity and spirituality in this world. Meaning that doubt is the greatest form of negativity. Now, what's an unbelievable thing? Rabbi Nachman says, Ein shum yeyosh ba'olam klal. There's no such thing as despair in the world at all. There's no such thing. It doesn't mean that there is such a thing and you should stay away from it. Otherwise, Rabbi Nachman would say, stay away from yeyosh, stay away from despair, stay away from anxiety, stay away from fear. He doesn't say that. He says, Ein shum yeyosh ba'olam klal, that Rabbeinu sha'ag, b'kol gadol, Rabbeinu screamed in a loud voice, there's no such thing as despair in the world at all. So where does the Baal Shem Tov say that Amalek is safek? He's despair. Because if you look in the Torah, which is the blueprint for creation, that everything that's in this world is somewhere in the Torah. Where do you see the word safek in the entire Tanakh? If you go through it from the beginning to the end, if you go through the whole Chumash, if you go through the whole Nach, if you go through the entire Ketuvim, you will not see the word safek once. Why? because the Chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov, the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman, is there is no such thing as doubt. There is no such thing as despair. So when you are engaged in it, when you are cogitating on it, when you are invested in doubts and anxiety, you're invested in a false reality, you're invested in a lie, and that's why you're having such pain from it. Because it's not because there is so much reason to be in doubt that you're in pain. It's because there's no such thing as doubt. That when you think about a lie, Rabbi Nachman says, automatically you're going to move into sadness and despair. Because lies cause pain. And it's not like the world teaches that sometimes the truth hurts. Rabbi Nachman says the truth only makes a person besimcha, that it's simchat Torah. That whenever you have Torah, you have truth, you automatically have simcha. And if you are invested in a lie, then the opposite's also true. Atzvut sheker. That as opposed to simchat Torah, you have atzvut sheker. That whenever you're thinking about a sheker or a lie, you're automatically going to go into sadness. Like the pasuk says in Bamidbar, Reshit Goyim Amalek, that Amalek is the first of the non-Jewish world, meaning to say that Amalek, this people or this force is Reshit, meaning it's the source. Reshit always represents the source which gives birth to every offspring, every branch of that reality. So just like the Torah teaches that the Jewish people are the Reshit of existence in the positive way, meaning that every good thing that happens in this world, every good deed that's done, every good thought, every good feeling is really the manifestation of the collective Jewish soul that's called Yisrael in the world. So to the opposite, that every negative thing that takes place, both within the individual psyche and in the collective experience of the world, is coming from this entity that's called Amalek. Amalek haya kofer be'ikr. And what's the whole essence of Amalek that he's so destructive? Because Chazal teaches that Amalek, they were kofrin. They didn't believe. They didn't have faith. That the whole entire ikr of a Jew is Amunah. And the whole ikr of Amalek is kofer. Apikorsim. Lack of faith. And they get everybody to depend on and believe in nature and medicine and science and doctors alone. That back then, what was the science, which is astrology? This is their whole entire ikr. That now it represents itself and it camouflages itself in the highest advancements of technology and science and medicine. And really all of that, no matter how advanced it is and no matter how much they know, they're only advancing in the lowest expression of reality. They're only advancing in the lowest expression of hashgacha pratit. So no matter how much advancement they make, it's still limited. It's like a person builds a sandcastle and he spends every waking minute trying to bring out new understandings of that sandcastle. But all he did was create a little tiny sandcastle. There's a whole entire beach. There's an ocean. There's wildlife. There's marine life. But the person is just busy with this little tiny sandcastle. So too, Rabbi Nachman says, it's great, wonderful, scientific advancements, technological growth. It's beautiful, but they're all dealing with the sandcastle. But there's a whole expression of reality which is so much bigger than that, which is so much more real than that, which is so much more inner than that, which is not external, but it's inside. And this is what we need to be busy researching. This is what we need to be busy investigating, because it's this thing itself which gives birth to that sandcastle. Because that sandcastle could not be built without the sand there. And that sand couldn't be there without the ocean which brought the sand there. So let's find out about the ocean. Let's find out about the Mayim. That the Torah and the Chazal say, Ein Mayim, Ein Torah. There's no such thing as Mayim that's not Torah. Let's go to the source. Like Rashi says explicitly there. Like Rabbeinu teaches us in the Likutey Moharan Tinyana, Siman Yotet. Any questions from today's lesson? We're going to continue tomorrow, Bezrat Hashem.
Hi,
Hi,
I have a question.
go ahead.
So are you saying that when you think that nature, like if you believe that nature's controlling things, you get left to nature?
Yes,
Like Hashem kind of conceals himself even more because if you choose to believe in nature, might missing.
you got the entire class.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Why didn't you teach this class? You could have just said it in one sentence when I took an hour to teach. Beautiful. You got it.
Oh, no way. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other comments or questions in the last couple minutes? Best thing to do is ask questions because then you get answers.
Shkoyach, Rav.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
How do we balance the having emunah with like doing our hishtadlut? Meaning, balancing the fact that there's this magefa, and that we are getting guidance to do certain things to protect ourselves, but at the same time have that complete faith in Hashem.
That's a great question. So I will tell you, and I know this is hard to fathom, but just try to stick with me for a second. I was in Uman for Hanukkah. I was with thousands of Jewish people. Some of them are in those pockets of individuals that they have no idea even that there is such a thing as COVID. And they were all davening their hearts out, and they were all having the highest level of hikashu with Rabbi Nachman, the Tzaddik Yesod Olam, and they were trying to connect in the deepest way to Emunah and to spirituality. And everybody in our trip, when we came back, that even though that must have been, according to the scientific medical world, the most dangerous place to be, and the greatest vulnerability that a person could cause himself would be in Uman for Hanukkah, around all of those people in the tight quarters. There was not one reported case of COVID from there. I did not get it. None of the people on our trip got it. And we didn't hear about one reported case. And that goes against everything that we've learned about the disease. This is not to say that there's not a real disease. There is a real disease. People are really dying. My rabbi passed away, and other people have had horrible, very, very, very sad experiences that have come from this. But it's to say that the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman is that there's two worlds that are existing parallel to each other. And Rabbi Nachman is trying to get us to live in the upper world while we're down here. That is to say that even though there's a physical world, and even though there's laws of nature, and even though there's a medical reality and there's a scientific reality, that while there's the truth, there's also the emet la'amito, there's the truth of truths. And Rabbi Nachman says that if you believe in the truth of truths while you're living in the truth, meaning you believe only in hashgacha pratit while you're living in the world of nature, then you're not bound by the world of nature. You're bound by the world of hashgacha. You're bound by the world of emunah. And the pasuk in Tehillim says very clearly that Hashem protects his simple ones. Simple does not mean ignorant. Simple does not mean that there's no hishtadlut. The focus of Rabbi Nachman is to take that same level of hishtadlut which you have or we have in the physical world and to reallocate it to hishtadlut in emunah. And the more that a person grows in emunah, the less that he is bound to whatever is taking place here, because he is not at the whim of this lowest expression of Hashem's hashgacha, which is called the world of Teva. And like the student said in the beginning just now, that it's what I believe in is what reality I'm thrown to, and that's really what it is. And this is the Chiddush of Rabbi Nachman. How do you find that balance? You need to know yourself. You need to live with where you are, but you need to constantly be growing. this question that you're having is really to the heart of, how do I know if I should be learning more or if it's going to be too much for me? How do I know if I should do an hour of Vibo to do it or that's too much for me? How do I know if I should be living with these teachings practically or if right now that's too much for me? This is the reason why Rabbi Nachman says he needs to have a moment or a time in every single day where he's able to see where he is and he's able to continually push the envelope. So to the degree in which you believe in this reality of Amunah, of Hashgacha, to that degree you can live in that place. So there's no simple answer to the question except to say that a person needs to really do Hibodedut every day to see where he's holding in his Amunah, and then he can determine how much Hishtadlut that he has to do. The less Amunah he has, the more Hishtadlut he has to do. The more Amunah he has, the less Hishtadlut he has to do, at least in the way that we think about it. It's not actually less Hishtadlut, it's the same amount of Hishtadlut, if not more. It's just a reallocation of the Hishtadlut. That instead of me maybe spending all day and night wrapping all of my apartment in plasticware and never leaving my house and wearing a mask or two masks or a face mask with a windshield, that I could spend that same amount of time in the field crying to Hashem and asking him that he should make sure that I'm healthy and happy and protected. And Rabbi Nachman says you'll be much safer than with all of the first efforts. That makes sense, Shachar?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Rabbi, I just wanted to kind of clarify what happened in my experience last week. So after the teaching on Thursday, when I felt that shift in consciousness, and I was telling you I was having these waves of emotional intensity,
Right.
Literally the waves stopped and I haven't had them since. So was that betul to the tzaddik that I was able to let the teachings in to such a degree that, because to me it was an experience of teshuva, like literally the momentum stopped.
Right.
And it was,
yeah, for sure. This is the what you experienced was the manifestation of this teaching in reality, and that is teshuva. And it's not what people think, that teshuva is some type of like I'm beating my chest and I'm saying about how bad I am. That's not teshuva. Teshuva is leaving investment in a false reality and moving closer to a investment in a realer reality. And the key to that, Rabbi Nachman says, is bitul and the tzaddik. That when you have bitul in the teachings, in the faith of the person who accomplished the highest level of consciousness, and you live with that consciousness even before you have achieved it yourself, then you draw from that place. And Hashem allows you to experience it. The example that I give from time to time, which is a very poor one, but it's the best one I can think of. When you go to a club, if you go to the VIP section, right? Let's say, for instance, you're not actually an important person, but you are friends with an important person. So as a result of that, when the person sees you, they're like, you're not coming in the VIP club. You don't have millions of dollars. And you don't have very nice clothing. And you're not very, very extremely handsome. So as a result of that, you don't get in.
Is everyone still here or is it just me?
I'm still here. Did the
still
rabbi
here.
drop off? Okay.
Yeah, I think he may have lost signal because he dropped off.
Okay. Let's see if he comes. Oh, I think he's coming
Yeah.
back on.
Yeah.
Maybe Rabbi Nachman doesn't like that example.
I'm gonna send him a message and let him know that we're still here.
So Sam, oh, come in. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Yeah, for sure. And he puts you in and he gives you the bottle, and he surrounds you with the cool people. So too, this very terrible lahavdil parallel or mashal is what it's like to have bittul tzaddik. Even though we have not even tasted anything close to the level of consciousness which someone like Rabbi Nachman got to his life, but if we believe in it and we have bittul to his advice and to his wisdom and to the lifestyle which he espouses for us to continue to grow in, and the consciousness which he's trying to get us to continue to make progress in through our this is wild. That this has to be wow. Oh my gosh. That when you say Nachman, all is that we kashrut the tzaddik to stay in the club of tzaddikim, the club of hashgacha pratit, the club of not being bound by the laws of this physical world, and I'm so sorry that I'm cutting off. Hashem, please allow this message to go in.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
I messaged Rav David, one of his students, to ask him if I should say what he wants to say because he's in and out. He said, please say it. So if nobody minds, I'll just say his example because I've heard it like a bunch of times. He's giving the example of the club basically is the VIP section, so to speak, that even though we do not merit being in the special section, if you know someone in there, even though you don't have the merits yet, that gets you get that special status, even though you don't merit it, until comes a time where you can merit it on your own merits. So by connecting to a tzaddik who's already reached a higher level of consciousness, we, so to speak, are allotted that higher status for ourselves, and that higher status is what allows us to grow to reach that higher consciousness. So it's kind of like he's at the top of a ladder, and that he picks us up until we can get to his level. I don't know if that more or less covered it.
Beautiful, Alex.
For everyone?
MS.
That was great. Thank you so much. Okay. Any last questions?
Rob, just a statement real quick. I know in one of your last video, I think you were talking about the Sechet Hagiga 22a about the mikvah. I don't know if you had found the reference, but that was the Hagiga 22a.
Thank
about
you.
the mikvah. So I just wanted to give you that. Just in case you-
Appreciate it. Beautiful. Wow, it's amazing. Thank you for looking into it after. That's awesome. Thank you, Leah. Okay, everybody, have an amazing, amazing day. Tonight, we're continuing Likutey Moharan. Don't miss it. We're going to be speaking about something very deep and very powerful. Okay? I'll give you a hint. Shabbat is the concept of teshuvah. Bezrat Hashem, we should be able to experience it in a very deep way tonight at 9 p.m. if you're local, and if you're not, to watch online. Everybody have an amazing day.